Second grade, a little bit over 21 students for each teacher in the Batchelder School. Second grade Hood School, 20 students for each teacher. Third grade in the Batchelder School, 26 students for each teacher. Third grade in the Hood School, a little bit over 21 students for each teacher. Fourth grade, Batchelder School, a little bit over 25 students for each teacher. Hood School, 25 students for each teacher. In fifth grade, 24 or 25 students for each teacher in the Batchelder School. The Hood School, 23 to 24 students for each teacher. And you can see here also the number of classrooms for each grade in the middle columns for each school. If our budget is not passed tonight, here are the enrollment teacher-student ratios that we foresee next year. Let me also note, going back, that the recommended ratios for the kindergarten to third grade are 23 students for each teacher. Fourth and fifth grade, 25 students for each teacher. With this distribution right here, in trying to meet the recommended ratios, it will require 4 additional teachers in the elementary levels. Yep. If passed. Yeah, budget recommending is passed. The budget we are proposing tonight is not passed. Worst case scenario, looking at a level funded budget. Here's the student-teacher ratios that we foresee for next year. Kindergarten, Batchelder, and Hood schools, 22 students for each teacher. First grade, Batchelder school, 28 students for each teacher. Hood School, 22 students for each teacher. Second grade, Batchelder School, 32 students for each teacher. Third grade, Hood School, roughly 27 students for each teacher. Third grade, Batchelder School, 26 students for each teacher. Hood School, 29 students for each teacher. Fourth grade, Batchelder, roughly 25 students for each teacher, and in the Hood School, 25 students for each teacher. Fifth grade Batchelder, roughly 25 students for each teacher, and in the Hood School, roughly 24 students for each teacher. Again, the recommended ratios for kindergarten to third grade are 23 students for each teacher. Fourth and fifth grade, 25 students for each teacher. So what are the options we're faced with this situation? First option, redistrict both schools to achieve a 24 or 25 to 1 student-teacher ratio. This will be done not only in a neighborhood or school-wide area, but probably on a grade level, where it wouldn't be unusual if we have 2 children in the same family, different grades, going to different schools. The purpose will be to try and achieve the best student-teacher ratio we possibly can to create the best learning environment for the children. Another option is possibly to move the 5th grade teacher from Hood School to Batchelder to lower the Batchelder second grade ratio. This will result in a large Hood School 5th grade of 31 students for each teacher in the Hood School. There's the conclusion that we come up with. Additional teachers are needed to maintain the recommended ratios. I would also like to bring up at this point the change in the per pupil investment over a 5-year period. with the enrollment and the budgets for that year, the dollars per pupil, and you can see the dollar change from the previous year and the percentage change from the previous year. If I move it down, you may see it a little better. Is that a little better? Okay. Let's look at the budget we're proposing for next year. We're looking at a $35 increase per student, or 0.8% over the previous year. The average, by the way, the national average projected for next year is $49.59 per student. The $35 that we are proposing for next year, increase per student, roughly covers the cost of one elementary science textbook, which is $33.95. Our per pupil expenditure, particularly we're proposing for next year, falls in the lowest third in Massachusetts. If our budget is level funded, being level funded is actually a deception, because with the increased student enrollment, we're actually decreasing our budget by 2%. Because the increased enrollment, we're actually spending $105 less per student. In summary, this is the budget that we are proposing. I see it as a necessary reinvestment into our community. I hope you agree with it and see it as a lean budget designed to provide sensible solutions to some of the problems affecting the students of North Reading. While it requires the expenditure of more money than last year, it will pay direct dividends for our youth. Thank you.
We have before us a motion to raise by taxation and appropriate the sum of $8,450,279 for the support of the public schools as printed on page 30 of the warrant under the sponsor's recommendation, and that includes line items 56 through 100 in the printed copy of the warrant that you have in front of you. We also have before us a motion to amend the bottom line of the education budget to $8,380,279, with $8,250,809 to be raised and appropriated, and to transfer $129,470 from the stabilization fund. Now, the chair would like to ask the Finance Committee to tell the meeting what it would mean to the town's budget vis-a-vis Proposition 2.5 if the original motion passes, which does not envision a transfer from the stabilization fund, but in fact proposes to raise the entire amount of $8,450,279 by taxation. Could someone on the Finance Committee please enlighten the meeting on that subject? Mrs. Holsing.
Yes. If the town meeting approves, as the school committee recommended, as written in the warrant, all to come from raise and appropriate, would be in effect out of balance. This would then, to balance the budget, we could go back and find that additional money and other lines that we haven't yet done to be done from stabilization. We could make cuts in services, or we could go for 2.5 override.
Okay. On the motion and on the amendment, is there any further discussion? Mrs. Holsing.
Yes, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to speak on the Finance Committee's amendment to the School Committee's motion. Our recommendation represents a $70,000 decrease, which we eye to be used on line 64, negotiations. It is our belief the town meeting has the right to know the full impact of contract negotiations before the money is awarded. This is the same philosophy that we used in the town-side general government when discussing their negotiations. We have decided to hold with that stance. We recommend that the school committee work diligently into having signed contracts and return to town meeting in October if they want this money for additional funding. Our $129,470 from stabilization we eye for use as written in the warrant on line 56, the teacher salaries. This funding represents the addition of new teachers into the school system. Although we support and would like new teachers, we as a committee feel we cannot economically afford it at this time. Although this transfer would come from stabilization this year, we're in danger of future years of not being able to fund such positions. Thus, we would come into in a future years of cutting the positions again and running the cost of unemployment insurance. In addition, we feel that if town meeting really wants these positions, we are in support of them, but we would like a 2/3 vote to have that support. That's it.
Any further discussion? Mr. Jervie.
Steve Jervie, 21 Land Drive. The points that Mrs. Holsing has raised, there are two basic things going on here in the Finance Committee's recommendation. One is the cut of $70,000. The other is the shift of part of the money to stabilization. And when they talk about the $70,000, when they talk about the school committee bringing signed contracts to town meeting before town meeting action, it's not the same situation as it is with local government. We have to start a school year in September, whether we have this money approved or not. Last year, we came to town meeting in April and asked for a budget which was not approved until October. We had wanted to hire more teachers to start September. We didn't dare. Think what would have happened to the students if, a month after the beginning of the school year, we had found that we could not afford those positions and we had had to redistribute those children into different classrooms and disrupt their year after 1 month. We couldn't take that risk. The money was eventually approved. What we did as an alternative was to hire aides, because if we had had to let go of the aides in October, at least the children would not have had to have been shipped among different classrooms and regrouped and completely discombobulated. Our primary responsibility is to those children. We cannot come back to you in October and ask for this money and then go back and try to redo what had been done in September. We have to start that school year in September. If you look at this budget, if you compare the lines, our sponsor's recommendation to the fiscal '92 budget, if you look at those lines, compare them, you'll see in most cases the amount in the sponsor's recommendation is less than what appeared in the '92 budget. The reason for that is because, lacking a contract, we just put a sum at the bottom called negotiations. We only put into the budget what had been approved the last time a contract was signed. Now, in many cases, these contracts have been signed since we had to put our numbers together. But that $70,000 is a very small